be difficult in a couple of areas, so we're going to have to see what they can do in this 2-hour race.
Yes, 2 hours the race. It's a sprint race, almost you could say it. But because of the sprint race, or the sort of like sprint format, it does mean that you don't actually need 2 drivers per car. There are some drivers who are doing it single-handedly, the race themselves. One that springs to mind immediately is Daniel Finney of the Zansho GT3 squad. I'm sure there's plenty of others within the field, but they currently, my mind escapes who they might be.
There's actually a fair amount
There'll be a
of
fair
drivers.
number,
I'd say it's probably a good half of the field or so, which actually makes it quite interesting. As in 2 races time, race 7, the final race of the season is Le Mans, and is a 4-hour race. So I wonder if these drivers will try and do 4 hours on their own, or if they will try and recruit a teammate. Because while it is quite a lot of single cars, it is the team and the car that wins the championship. So we have to see how it goes. And speaking of the championship, both of the 2 classes are actually pretty close. Each class gets their own individual points separately, so it doesn't matter where you finish in terms of the overall result. It matters where you finish in your class. And leading the way is the number 5 Speedy Mite Racing car, which is being driven by Luke Burke. He is on 97 points, and behind them is the number 33 Team Rookie Monsters on 87 points, which is being driven by Timo Andonovski and Luca D'Amelio. But Luca is in the car today. That is
and
pretty close as well. Yes, so he is actually one of the quicker drivers in, well, generally in R Factor at the moment. He's doing pretty good at the moment in 2020. He's moved to Race Clutch in the VEC as well in Division 1 hypercars, so he's a very fast driver, and he is probably one to look out for. But in the GT3s, it is some different teams, which is nice to see. We've got Wave Freem Esports, which is Lorenzo Risi on 108 points, and then we've got the number 62 Zancho on 105, so only 3 points separate those 2 drivers,
which
or
is
those 2
essentially
teams, I should
position.
say. Yeah, it's pretty close, and that is James Johnson to look out for. So yeah, those guys are really the ones to look out for in terms of the championship. But obviously we've got 40 cars here today, so plenty of drivers to look out for. 30 points for a win, so also plenty of points to grab yourself as well.
Yes, we've got 40 cars out there. I believe we have 19 LMP3s and then 21 GT3s. So pretty much half and half. A pretty good split, but you've just got to be careful at what points these LMP3 cars are actually faster than the GT3 cars, and at what points they can actually overtake, because it's an incredibly high-speed circuit. And when it comes to top speed, I'd say there's probably about 15 kilometers an hour. Excuse me, 15 kilometers an hour, so difference in the top speeds of the GT3s and the LMP3s. Where the P3 really makes up all the time is in the twisty bits, is in the corners, and especially the high-speed corners.
Yeah, the LMP3 is GT3-based V8, if I'm not mistaken. So in terms of top speed, as you say, they are fairly similar. LMP3 is quicker, but it's nothing too crazy. But it is where the prototype chassis, the lighter chassis, more downforce comes in the corners. Obviously, it is a GT3 car as well. It's not even a GTE. So there is a 2-class difference between these cars. The drivers are now lining up on the grid for the formation lap, where they will have to sit on the pit limiter. So the race will go green, but we will not be starting for 1 lap as the drivers get in position to start the race on the pit limiter.
And just to go through quickly the top 10 of each class as they did qualify. So Luca D'Amelio in the Team Rookie Monsters in the 33 car qualified on pole in LMP3. Then it was number 39 Semi Celik of Caspian Motorsport. Number 10 of Lazarus Philippakis, Speedy Mite, in fourth was number 48 of Alexander Jones, and one of the other Speedy Mite LMP3s. I think there's about 4 or 5 LMP3s actually for Speedy Mite. They're taking over. Then it's number 43, Scooter Leone, the number 9, Speedy Mite, the number 50, Scooter Leone, the number 5, Speedy Mite, the number 14, Drive Game Seat, then in 10th place, number 7, Danilo Smergello in the Wave Freem Esports car. And in terms of GT3s, number 62 of James Johnson, the Zanshow car, was on pole. Then it was Nick De Silva in the 83 Speedy Mite, Lorenzo Risi in the 87 Wave Freem Esports, Tony Mellon in the 57 Zanshow, the number 76 of One Move Esports of Matteo De Krupp. Then it's the 63 Ground Effect Sim Racing, the 73 Rookie Monsters, the number 51 Witchwood car, number 97 Go Team Racing, and then in 10th place, number 74 Handy Racing Team car.
So interesting things to note is your two championship leaders in both classes are not on pole. Then in LMP3, Luca Burke in the number 5 Speedy Mite is down in 8th place. So he's got quite a lot of work to work his way up. He's only 10 points ahead of Luca in the number 33, but he is obviously leading the pack at the moment. So he's got 2 hours to try and get up the grid. They will have to make a pit stop within the 2 hours. Neither car can do a 2-hour fuel stint, but the LMP3 will be able to go much longer than an hour if they use a full tank. So that will make their final pit stop shorter. So there's a bit of strategy there. Whereas the GT3 is going to be pitting nearer to the 1 hour mark, and it might be a little bit tighter for those if there is a code 80, which might influence when they take the pit stop.
Indeed, it does. The LMP3s can do about an hour and 10 minutes, usually, and the GT3 is about an hour. So the GT3 pit window is far, far shorter than the LMP3 pit window just because of the size of their fuel tanks, for example.
Yeah, we saw that last time out in Interlagos as well. A couple of the GT3s took the opportunity of a code 80 at about the 52 or 53 minute mark, I think it was. So they had to stretch that last stint, and a couple of them in the end actually had to make a second pit stop. So in the end, it didn't actually work out for them. We're gonna have to see if something similar happens today. And in the GT3s, Lorenzo Arisi for Waveframe is starting in 3rd place, so he's not quite as bad, but his championship rival James Johnson is starting on pole position.
And just as long as essentially between Johnson and Lorenzo Risi, it's essentially a three race shootout for the championship between those two.
Yeah, 3 races, so you've got 8 hours of racing. So plenty of time to sort it out, but they are very close.
Yeah, regarding that championship, you might as well have just started the championship now, to be honest, they're that close.
Yeah, possibly could have actually. It's only 3 points, and the difference between 1st and 2nd is 5 points, I believe.
Yeah.
So if James Johnson wins and Lorenzo Risi finishes 2nd, he will take the championship lead with only 2 races to go after this one.
As the LMP3s around Sunset Bend, the final corner here at Sebring underneath the bridge, and they get to release that pit limiter as soon as they cross the start-finish line. Look at D'Amelio hugging that inside line, taking the shortest road possible round to try and gain as much track between himself and Semichelik behind as possible. But here they come, and coming across the line, look at D'Amelio crosses, and we are green for the 2 hours of Sebring. And going into turn 1, the first big opportunity for a mistake, really, because not only is turn 1 difficult anyway, you're not up to full speed, so you know your braking point or whatever can change and maybe even catch you out a little bit, and we almost saw that happen. Oh, we've seen that happen behind. There's an LMP3 car immediately in the barriers.
There's the drive game seat car is around. They've lost the rear wing, unfortunately, so they are going to be probably not going too much further in this race in terms of points, but it's Lorenzo De Chutis who is going to have to come all the way back around. He's got to do the full 6 kilometers of this track, and there's a couple of cars actually trying not to overtake. So I think we have actually been called into a code 80, so back down to 80 kilometers an hour, and this is going to be a fairly long one, as De Chutis is going to have to go all the way around to get to that pit entry. We won't go green until he is all safe. And yeah, it was a fairly clean start apart from that, it seems, for now. And a couple of these GTs are getting really close for the lead at the moment, but it seemed like everyone in the top 3 at least has kept their positions.
Going back to see what happened to De Chutis. Was there contact or was it a mistake? No, it was just a mistake. He just lost the rear end.
I mean, the tyres would have been cold, brakes would have been cold, and it is quite a long formation lap here because we have to do the full out lap. So maybe just wasn't quite prepared for the start of this race.
Yeah, he just lost the rear end and he tried to counter steer, then it just suddenly gained grip and snapped to the right and sent him directly into the outside wall. But yes, something, while under Code 80, there's something of a little bit of an art to Code 80, isn't there? Because as opposed to the normal, when you're racing it, racing speeds, you want to take the straightest line possible, if you like, around the track. But when you're under Code 80, you want to take the shortest line possible around the track to try and just gain perhaps a little bit of time over the car behind.
You could actually gain a fairly respectable margin. Literally maybe 5 to 10 car lengths, depending on how long the Code 80 is, if you actually do it. Well, it's just a little game that you do sometimes, and often if you start doing it, you'll see the car behind you follow you. But yeah, you literally just need to take the shortest line, because you're limited to the 80 kilometers an hour of the pit limit. So as long as you keep your 80 kilometers an hour, you just need to go the shortest distance, hug the inside of the corners, and then do a beeline across the straight to get to the inside of the next one. But at the end of the day, this is only the start of the race, so they're not really going to be too bothered about the couple of meters here and there. But it's certainly something to look out for maybe later in the race if we get another Code 80, because you can gain a decent amount of time. And also the Code 80, depending on where you release the Code 80, you can actually gain time as well. Because if you're in the middle of a corner, you can't accelerate once it goes green. So you actually effectively lose a tiny bit more time as well. But that is just the ups and downs that you get due to the ways of it working. And we got Tutis now coming onto the back straight. He's in 28th position, and once he enters the pit lane,
It'll be
I
in
think
Green
he
Part
was
2 Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah, he was the only one affected, so he's the only person we got to wait to get safely into the pit lane. And he will need to get those repairs. He's going to possibly be a lap down by the time he comes out of the pit lane.
Oh, most certainly, as he pulls into the right, bears right on the front straight. And there's also a GT3 car that's came in to serve one of their penalties, but I don't think that's allowed.
10 seconds.
Yeah, Matteo De Krupp was assigned a drive-through penalty after what happened last race into Lagos, but he's taken that under Code 80, and I don't think you're allowed to do that.
As far as I'm aware, yes, you're not allowed to take penalties under Code 80, so he might be getting a further penalty from that. But we are back green. Luke de Melo is leading by about 1 second from Selic in the Caspian racing car. Then we got Philippakos in 3rd place.
Yeah, Lazarus Philippakos, the mad Greek, using a controller because reasons.
Yeah, he's one of, I think, probably the only driver to actually use the controller in this field. So I have to, learn a bit about that, because it is a bit weird as he sort of wiggles about on the straight sometimes as he moves the joystick. I think there's a position there for Tony Miller on Rick Van Earl, battling down towards the end of Sector 1 with the ground effects sim racing car. But it looks like he's made that position in 21st overall.
And Luca Berg, who we were talking about earlier, is already up into 6th place. So he's made a couple of positions off the beginning. The championship leader.
Yeah, so I think Tutis, if I'm not mistaken, was ahead of him, but he's certainly made up another place, because he was in 7th and he's now up into 6th place. But he's some 8 seconds off the lead at the moment, even though we've literally did 3 corners and then a Code 80. But that is what happens when you start a bit further back. He's going to have to work his way up.
Yeah, and also the way that we do the starts here in the VLMC, indeed SRC overall, is that, you have to be single file and you let go of the pit limiter when you cross the line. So that just spreads them out a little bit more. That was just having a look. I think that was Ruben Correa and Alves almost hitting the barriers on the exit of Sunset Bend. He went really wide, but kept his foot in it and is still essentially right on the rear wing of Danilo Smerglio for that 8th place in class and overall. the Wave Freem Esports versus Scuderia Leone.
Yeah, some battles in the GT3 pack as well. We had Daniel Finney come out of the corner onto the back straight, out of Le Mans corner onto the back straight, got a massive wiggle on, and he actually got overtaken by Mazzetti. So he's lost a position there in 27th overall at the moment. 11th place in class for the number 67 Zancho.
Yes, that number 67 Zancho car making their way. Well, it's part of the massive gaggle of GT3 cars making their way down towards the hairpin. And I think that's Andy Dixie and Matteo De Krupp just having a little bit of a battle coming down into the hairpin itself, just behind Finney. But yes, this essentially gaggle of GT cars that really hasn't broken up at all.
Yeah, and De Krupp is still side by side here, actually. They've been side by side for over a kilometre now, but it seems like he has made that work as the two McLarens go side by side in Sector 2 here. But yeah, De Krupp has made that stick, but he might be serving another penalty at some point because, as we said, he served his drive-through under the Code 80, which you're not allowed to do. So we'll have to see what comes of that. And looking at some other penalties, we've got Philippakos, who is just actually coming in now. I think he's serving his penalty. We've also got Correa Alves, who will need to be serving one as well. So there's a couple of the top guys, and Alves actually is now having to defend into turn 1. Smereglia is going to go up the inside. Oh, sorry. Other way around, actually. Alves was making the move up the inside of turn 1, and he's actually still there. Coming into turn number 3 and 4, they're still side by side, and this would be a great move if he can make it stick, because he'll have slightly bit of contact there, and
he's gone round.
Semeglio is round. Semeglio is round. He hit the barrier as well there as they come onto the back straight.
Yeah, down through Big Ben, down towards the hairpin. Was there contact that caused Smeglio to go around in that Wave Freem Esports car?
I just need to double check, but there was definitely, yes, Alves had a little bit of a wiggle. There's some initial contact, then he had a little bit of a wiggle, which caused a second contact. Did he hit the wall? No, he actually managed to keep it out of the wall, so he should be fine there. He just probably lost about 5 or 10 seconds.
Yeah. Ruben Correa Alves in 6th place now, holding off. I made that 1, 2, 3, 4 cars in a row almost now. Simon Marshall, Cameron Cinsano, David Yunton, Ollie McGowan, all in a line behind him. As he's making his way down towards the complex, the right, left, right before coming on to the back straight. We'll say the back straight. We've said back straight multiple times for different straights.
Yeah, there's about 3 of them.
And they're all parallel with each other as well.
Yeah, Sebring, it's got some pretty fast corners, but there's actually 5 straights, or is it 6? Maybe 6 straights actually recognised on this track. So you do need some pretty low downforce as well.
They're making their way through Sunset Bend. Just have a look at those cars bucking around like a horse.
Yes, so bumpy. It is so bumpy on this circuit.
As Cameron Cinsano is having a look at Simon Marshall diving to the left-hand side for 7th place overall. And makes that move stick, or does Marshall hang around the outside? Well, he does for now, actually. Cinsano giving him a lot of room, but eventually makes that move around the inside of turn 1. So Cinsano now up into 7th. Now Simon Marshall has to try and hold off Yunt and McGowan at the same time for 8th.
Yeah, getting very close in. Simon Marshall, I do believe, has just moved into that car. So this is his first race in the LMP3. Ricky Monsters also have a GT3 that he was in. And that car specifically doesn't actually have a point yet, but he's doing pretty decent here in 8th place at the moment. Battling with David Junt, as you say. But yeah, Mathieu De Krupp has been given another drive-through penalty for his infringement of how he took his first penalty, so he's going to have to be back into the pit lane in the next few laps.
Yeah, because if you took your drive-through under Code 80 conditions, there's some tracks where if you took your drive-through under Code 80, you could gain time.
We'll come to Code 80 in 10 seconds.
For example, as we are coming to Code 80, because I believe Andy Dixie has had an incident out on circuit.
4,
yeah, I've
3,
just found
2, 1, code 80.
Where it is. It's coming into turn 3. He had a bit of contact with the Audi. I can't remember the name of that team, unfortunately, but his contact with one of the Audis coming into turn 3, slid across the grass, couldn't slow it down, and he has lost his his rear wing. He's actually going to have some suspension damage as well with that, I would highly assume. So that is going to be another lengthy pit stop and another driver without their rear wing, and we've only had the first 15 minutes of the race.
That's 15 minutes. Well, it's 15 minutes since we began. It's only about 12 minutes of green, though. Because of here, we do run 2 hour and 3 minute races, if you like.
Everyone remember that you cannot serve penalties under code 80. Just remember that.
And race director Sean Jacobs reminding everyone that you can't serve your penalty under code 80. Yes, essentially we run 2 hour and 3 minute races here in the VLMC because we allow 3 minutes for the warm-up lap to try and get these guys as close to 2 hours of racing as possible. 2 hours of, I would say, green flag racing, but maybe not quite the case.
Yeah, we haven't had too much of that. And there's actually another car, Antonio Vincent's, who is in the pushrod racing car, and I think this was the car that had the contact with Dixie. But I think he's crashed himself.
Because he's in the pit lane.
Yeah, he crashed himself as we came on that lap as well. He crashed in Sunset Bend on his own. I think it's because maybe that's when the code 80 got called, but he was trying to slow down quite heavily in the middle of the corner. Car wouldn't turn, smashed into the barrier 2, maybe 3 times, and then he's had to work his way into the pit lane. But he is now back out, but we're still under code 80 conditions. He is 1 lap down though, so that is quite a way for him to make up. And also 1 lap down is Lorenzo De Chutis down in 40th position.
Yeah, Antonio G. Vicens just came out ahead of one of the LMP3 cars. I'm trying to tell which one that is. I can't quite. I think it's the one in 6th place, actually. I think it may well be
Alvarez.
Ruben Alvarez. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Alves. Sorry, yeah, Alves. There is no. Well, there is blue flags, but he doesn't have to get out of the way because it is the duty of the faster class to make the overtake work. So when we get back green, he will have to get past her, though. That should be a fairly easy maneuver because he is so close. Though Alves has dropped a little bit behind Veltons as well, who is his teammate in 5th and 6th at the moment. The gaps have actually, in terms of time, obviously the gaps have got bigger, but in terms of distance as well, Luca D'Amelio's got a pretty decent lead.
Yeah, I'm just having a look at David Yunt and Ollie McGowan for that 8th place. There's actually no Satel coming into the hairpin. As we are
come back to green in 10 seconds.
Green again soon, 10 seconds.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, green flag.
And there we go, back to green flag racing. David Ewan trying to hold off Ollie McGowan in one of the many, many Speedy Mike cars that we have in this series.
Yeah, I believe there's 5 of them overall.
I think there's 5 LMP3 cars, and there's more in GT3s.
Yes, 5 LMP3 cars, and they've all got a different colour as well to try and help identify them a little bit, because sometimes the race number is not enough. But yeah, David Junt in 8th place seems to have got a bit of a better getaway from McGowan, so holding on to that 8th place for now. And Smereguleo just behind them in 10th place. He's actually not doing too bad, considering he had the spin earlier, but we don't think he got too much damage from that. The spin with Alves, so yeah, he's looking pretty decent there in 10th place for now.
After taking his drive through penalty earlier, Lazarus Philippakis, number 10 Speedomite car, is now into 14th place.
And looking at the GT3s, Lorenzo Arisi has got the lead of that car. Although we got another car crash.
Cameron Sansano.
Yeah, Sansano lost his rear wing. But this is at the final corner. Yeah, probably not going to get a code 80 for that, but that is another car. That is, I think, the 4th car now with no rear wing, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think it's number 4, yeah.
Yeah,
so yeah. What happened, and I think he just lost it himself over the bumps. And then put in kind of fairly flush, actually, into the barrier, so I don't think there should actually be that much suspension damage. As Nick De Silva comes in one of the other Speedy Mike cars to serve what I believe may well be a
Yes,
drive-through penalty.
he had a drive-through penalty, so this is going to put Johnson back into second place. But as I was just mentioning before the crash, Risi managed to get the lead from not only Johnson but De Silva as well. Johnson got overtaken twice, but he is now back into second place, and he's got Rick Van Eyl all over the back of him for third place in class.
They're making their way through Big Bend and down towards the hairpin, the biggest braking zone in the circuit. I think it is pretty much the hairpin, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd say so. There isn't actually too many proper hard braking zones, apart from that one and then the corner they're going to be coming up to next. So, yeah, there isn't too many really big braking zones. It's actually pretty high-speed track, this.
As they're making their way through Cunningham, the right-hander, then through the left to Tower, the next right-hander. And Van Eyl a little bit too far back to make a move at the moment, and James Johnson in the Zancho car.
And down in 8th place in GT's got Mazzetti, who just went off as well down at turn 10 in the number 74. It seems like he's actually just got back on track, but maybe those brakes are still a little bit cold from the code 80. And actually, Andy Dixie now is coming out of the pit lane after repairing his damage.
As Lazarus Philippakos is making his move back up the order, battling Nick Newcomb at the moment in the EVA Racing by Basilia car, but Lazarus has made that move stick. He's now up into 12th place after his drive through. His next target is Rob Timpin. However, Timpin is 7 seconds up the road.
Yeah, there's a bit of a gap there for me, actually, hasn't there, over the first few minutes of this race. So yeah, a little bit of a gap that he's got to fill, but just ahead of that gap is quite a few cars, so a few positions to make up.
Mariglio,
Timpin,
McGowan,
Marshall.
Marshall and Timpin in that battle pack for 8th place.
And I don't think we're going to see this battle break up too quickly as well. As we said, these P3s can go quite far on their fuel. So these guys, I'm sure, all pretty much brim the tank to start off. So they're going to be here for a while trying to battle it out and then seeing when they're going to make that all-important pit stop. Because that is where you can lose quite a lot of time here and there, depending if you take more fuel, less fuel, or if you have to repair any damage as well.
Of course, the code 80s will have helped to just extend that window a little bit further into the race for these LMP3 cars, and of course the GTE3s as well, but it just helps them extend that window ever so slightly more.
Yeah, it would help quite a lot actually, because they will barely be using any fuel going at 80 kilometers an hour. So that would push them, as you say, deeper into the racing. Because it is such a long track, that obviously means you have to save even more fuel to save a pit stop, or sorry, to save a lap in the pit stop in terms of refueling. And we now got a pit stopper. We got Arjen Veltens in P11, the number 50. Let's see what he is going to do. It's quite early to make a pit stop with almost an hour and 40 minutes to go. He's not going to be able to get to the end on that fuel. So he's going to have to make another pit stop. So I do wonder why he is pitting now.
As we've had our first DNF of the race, it's Nick De Silva in the Speedy Mite number 83, a GT3 entry, coming into turn 1 and just lost the rear end a little bit, tried to correct, and the car just gripped up and went into the tyre barriers on the outside of turn 1, lost the right rear wheel, I think, and the rear wing, and that is it for the AC3 car for this race at Sebring.
And your third place GT3 runner, Rick Van Eyl, in the ground effect car has taken a drive-through penalty. So he's dropped down quite a bit now to 9th place overall. 9th place in class, 23rd overall. So that means James Johnson now doesn't have anyone directly behind him. So he can just focus on catching Arisi for this race lead in the GT3 class.
Yes, focusing on that race lead, just trying to get closer and closer. And indeed, there isn't actually that much gap. I think James Johnson's made up a little bit of the gap there. Made up. Slight. Right, I'll start that sentence again. I think James Johnson's got closer to Lorenzo Risi over the past couple of laps.
It certainly has, and the couple of cars getting out of his way has certainly helped that. These two drivers also both in the same machinery as well. So the GT3 car's got a recent BOP update as well. So that doesn't affect them anyway because they're all in the same car. So at least these two drivers anyway. And the Aston and the Mercedes, the McLaren 720S seems to be the choice of quite a few drivers, as we now see a position overall. Brambilla gets overtaken by Miyoki, but Miyoki is actually an LMP3 working his way up. He must have had a penalty or something earlier on that put him down in terms of the overall positions. So he's working his way back through the GT3s.
He's slowly making his way back through the GT3s. And James Johnson, having a look at the previous lap, perhaps actually the last lap for Lorenzo Risi was a 2-minute 1.4. James Johnson a 2-minute 0.7, so 7/10 made up by JJ in that last lap.
And their best lap times.
So they are.
I was about. Oh no, so that was actually their best sector times. But either way, their best lap times are pretty much even. Their best sectors are all within hundredths of each other, so they are very close on pace between these two drivers. And we've actually now got some traffic ahead of them now.
Their best lap time overall for both. Their best lap time so far for both of them is a 2-minute 0.612. It's the same to a thousandth of a second.
Very close indeed, and Arisi's actually been held up a little bit. There is blue flags within the same class, so they should be given a fairly easy move, but sometimes drivers do forget this. No blue flags between classes, but for the same class there is, and they've now been let through, but they now have Miyoki coming up the back of them as well with the higher top speed of that P3. James Johnson needs to just watch his mirrors, although leading the championship, he's obviously a very experienced driver.
Of course. But something that you did say earlier is that, of course, I think that was Antonio Miyoki going quite wide off of the.
It was the
Brambilla,
Vincent.
sorry.
It was Vincent's, wasn't it? In the lapped down pushrod racing car in the background. Brambilla is the one behind them. So you obviously have the traffic as well. And now Johnson's actually really close, coming onto the start-finish straight.
That LMP3 car held up Arisi ever so slightly through Sunset Bend. That's really helped his Ancho car making their way down to turn one. Of course, you do get slipstream, but turn one, you don't really brake at all, so you can't really make any opportunity of that slipstream. Turn 3, however, is a big braking zone that James Johnson could capitalise at, but he's deciding better of it at this time, which means his next big braking zone will be the hairpin.
And he's got to work his way up. These GT3s are obviously not overly powerful, so there's quite a lot of momentum and sort of build-up that you have to do to get in a position to make an overtake. And if you slightly go into a corner too hard, you will lose a couple of tenths and then have to work that time back over the next few laps as Johnson goes a little bit deep there. So he would have lost a tiny bit of time. And now that is what I mean. He's going to have to work those couple of tenths back over the next few corners to see if he can get that slipstream maybe down the back straight into Sunset Bend. And looking towards the front now, we've actually got David Junt battling with Smareglio. And then just behind them, we've got Simon Marshall, who I believe is overtaken Ollie McGowan for 8th place overall. One of the Speedy Mike cars, as we said, number 38. Simon Marshall doing a pretty decent job in his first race in the LMP3s. Well, he's sliding there a little bit though. These cars are a little bit tail happy. I do believe the P3s now have traction control this season. But it's still a little bit tail happy because you don't want to be bouncing off that traction control as you just don't move coming out of a corner.
Yeah, it's just horrific with the traction control sometimes. Is that, you're pressing the accelerator, but you're just not going at all because the traction control is deciding to not do that for you.
Yeah, that's something that the drivers will have to tune to find out which one suits them best for maybe which corners, because I'm sure some drivers do change it by a few clicks across the lap, depending on how pedantic they are with how their car's feeling. I'm sure some also just set the one and run with it, but it's
I
still
mean,
something that you have to work out.
yeah, that's the style of setup that I'd have. Just one, no, that'll do. One setup for the race. I can't be bothered changing it throughout the race. It'll be fine.
Yeah, it's the same with brake bias. I would assume, I'm sure a lot of drivers don't want to be changing things and all that sort of stuff, but sometimes that is what you have to do to get the best results, and just tweak the car to your liking depending on what corner you're coming up to next.
Yes, generally, I'd move the if when I was racing, I'd move the brake bias throughout a stint as the tires wore and the fuel got lighter. But on a lap from corner to corner, no, that's just too much mental capacity that I don't have.
I guess that's what it takes to get to the top, though,
It is, and that's why I'm not there.
and especially with the fuel mixtures and stuff like that as well that drivers have access to. It's always something extra to think about. And something to think about as well is traffic, and it seems that the LMP3s over the last lap or so have started to hit the GT3s, which is always the time where things can happen. You start to lose time in the traffic. So people who do not have traffic is Arisi and Johnson, at least for now. They don't have anyone around them just yet, so Johnson can work his way up again to the back of Arisi. He's getting very close here in the final corner, but
You also got the
cannot quite stay close enough.
We've also got the battle for third even as well between Daniel Brambilla and Tony Mella. Those two are very close as well. They're just coming onto the front straight. But Lorenzo Risi and James Johnson is the battle for the lead in the GT3s as it stands, making their way around turn one. And there, I think Risi just took an ever so slightly wider line than James Johnson.
Yeah, the turning point for turn one is really weird, because if you turn in the tiniest bit too late, you get on the bumps, you get off the line, and it just pulls you wide. You have to get the car very tight towards the concrete wall on the inside. And as I say, if you miss it just a tiny bit, it really ruins your whole line around the corner.
Of course, you don't want to hug it too tight into that concrete wall because...
Oh, Johnson goes too deep,
yeah,
and he
that was
loses another few car lengths. We did that about 3 laps ago, so maybe that is a corner where he is not quite so confident on the brakes.
Or it could just be that, he's... I would say getting a little bit too excited that he's getting to the car behind, but of course he's the car in front even, but of course he's a very, very experienced driver. Just thinking, I just get a little bit closer to perhaps spook him into mistake, but in order to try and spook him into mistake, he's made a mistake himself.
And that is the balance that you've always got to get. How much do you push? The risk versus reward. And especially in multi-class racing, there's so many variables about how you gain time, lose time, etc. Pit stops. It's all these variables that you have to balance out and find out what you're going to do with your race strategy.
As they're making the way down, of course, James Johnson will make as much use of that slipstream as possible, but again, Sunset Bend, you do break a bit for Sunset Bend, but not anywhere meaningful where you could make a lunge. Because really, you turn in, then start braking.
Yeah, it's quite a fast corner, really, but it's 2 corners, as you say. You kind of turn in, brake, and then you turn again. And it's really the balance of being on the brakes for as little amount of time as possible to carry as much speed. Although you do actually want to miss the bumps in Sunset Bend, so going a little bit deep can actually help you avoid those. But then, as we've seen, 2 or 3 people have already hit the barriers on the outside.
Yeah, James Johnson that last time ring, just because of that mistake at the hairpin, lost 7 tenths, made that 8 tenths actually of a second. By just outbraking himself at the hairpin.
I would assume he could make that up though, because it does seem like he's potentially the slightest bit quicker than Arisi, but these two are leading the championship for a reason, and they're actually leading by quite some way, it has to be said. Behind them, there is 42 points to the next car.
That's
So,
half their score. Yeah.
yeah, so they are on 108 and 105 points, and then the next person, who is the 83 Speedy Mite, who I believe is Nick De Silva, is on 62 points. So quite a way behind in the championship.
And Nick De Silva won't be scoring today.
No, so if these two get a 1-2, that's going to be another 25 and 30 points ahead. So that could be quite a big advantage, actually.
Well, that would turn it into a 2-horse race, essentially. Well, it would almost be at the point where only those two are mathematically eligible to win the championship.
Yeah, I guess it might depend on what the Rookie Monsters 73, currently driven by Mantis Wreckers, can do. 8th place overall, though, but they are 1 point behind De Silva, so they're on 62 points. So behind them is actually a pretty close battle. There's another Zancho car, Witchwood, Seawolf, another Zancho car again. So there is quite a few cars all pretty close, but it is these two who are going off into the sunset, quite literally, at this racetrack. Yeah, I think Johnson might be catching up just a tiny bit again.
Yeah.
I don't think this battle is anywhere near over.
Yeah, I think perhaps Johnson is the slightly faster driver at this point in the race between himself and Arisi. Thing is that James Johnson just isn't fast enough to make a pass. Because you need to have almost like a certain time delta in order to be able to be fast enough to make a pass. And it appears that, Johnson just quite isn't at that mark yet.
Yeah, the margins are so small, and the slipstream as well is there, but you do have to be there to get it. So you do have to kind of maybe commit for a couple of corners and see what you can do. And talking about committing, we've got Tony Miller for 4th place, and the 57 Zancho all over the back of Brambilla now. Brambilla doing a pretty good job there in 3rd place as well. But Miller is looking to take that position.
Yeah, get up onto that podium position and drink the virtual champagne.
I'm sure some drivers drink real champagne as well. They had a choice.
Incredibly expensive. It'd be Prosecco or Brut instead.
Yeah, well, the money from a lot of these drivers will go into their rigs, I'm sure. Because at least when you get towards the high end, the equipment is not it's not the cheapest, but there's certainly some good base entry level ways of getting into sim racing, and it is a brilliant way of spending your afternoon. It's very good fun going out into these cars on these tracks, especially Sebring, because it is a scanned track, so all the bumps and everything like that is how it is in real life.
Yeah, of course, this is, the laser scanned version. And I think it is here and Monaco Ypres that has been laser scanned, or at least the Monaco circuit, I should say, rather. And the Nürburgring has also been laser scanned as well for R Factor 2. The entire Nordschleife as well.
And not forgetting Le Mans as well.
Yes, Le Mans as well, of course. I can't forget about that one.
Yeah, which we'll be getting to in a couple of races' time as well for the finale. And I do love Le Mans. It's one of those fan favourites as well as Sebring.
I would say something blasphemous, but I don't think I can on this broadcast. I think I might be kicked out. But Tony Mella appears to have just fallen back ever so slightly from the back of Brambilla over the past lap or so, or at least over the past half lap. And the same you can really say for Johnson and Arisi as well. Johnson's fallen back ever so slightly.
Yeah, last lap Mella was about 0.2 slower. So yeah, just a little bit slower, but those tenths are what matters when you're trying to make an overtake. And talking about tenths, actually, that cannot be said for Luca Di Melio, who's now got an 8-second lead in the Rookie Monsters ahead of Caspian Racing. But Luca Burke now is up into 3rd place. As you mentioned, he started in 8th position. although he's just gone off the track as I mention him, and he is leading the championship. He would really like to get into some sort of position to challenge Luca, with Luca being his closest rival. Our third position is not too bad considering we've only had a bit over a quarter of the race for now.
Yeah, just over a quarter of the race gone. It's just kind of flown by. And because we're now in this, will be 38 minutes roughly of green flag, or at least since the green flag, I should say, the LMP3 drivers will be starting to think about when to make their pit stops. They can do about an hour and 10. They can do about 70 minutes. So the magic number for them is 53 minutes gone, which we won't reach for another 12 or 13 minutes or so. That was really the first time these LMP3 cars can mathematically make it on a full tank to the checkered flag. But of course, they would have saved a little bit of fuel due to the 3 code 80s we had in the beginning of the race. And of course, not all of them will fill up a full tank. Some of them will have started in a full tank and go as long as possible before filling up again.
Yeah, that's really the two strategies you've got. One is to underfuel, so that maybe if there's a code 80, you can save time there. Or the other way of saving time is to fill it up to the brim, and then go as far as you can, which means you'll have to take less fuel, which means your pit stop will be shorter. So there's just a couple of ways you can save a bit of time. It's not always the most efficient to go straight down the middle 50-50 with 1 hour each. But again, that is just part of the strategy. And Tony Mello was actually getting pretty close to Brown Beer, but he's just lost some time in the traffic there. He's got another P3 coming up behind him as well, who I believe is Luca D'Amelio, the race leader.
Yes, and of course, there's an art of being lapped, isn't there? Because you've got to try and let the leading car through, in this case, as easily as possible, but while also trying to not lose time yourself. It's almost like a bit of an art, and it's something that you can only really get through experience.
Yeah, I mean, technically they don't have to let them through, but sometimes it is just easier to make the overtake easy for both of you, because you generally just end up losing more time than you gain if you do the overtake incorrectly or at a really awkward corner, something like that. Sometimes you end up both losing time, which is where the communication and the body language and the headlights and things like that come into play.
Of course, something that I did see actually at the Bathurst 12 hour a couple of weeks ago is that with their GT3 cars and GT4s as well, as to help lapping, they put their indicators on essentially to indicate which side of the road the car was going to, so that the lapping car could move across to the other side of the road. But unfortunately, not quite got that technology yet in our Factor 2.
I'm sure that that would be quite helpful. Although Tony Mello actually is trying to go round the outside of Brown Beer in turn 10, couldn't quite make it work. But he has certainly got the speed. Just needs to find a way past. And
Pacos is coming into the pits.
That's a little bit early, wouldn't you say? Unless he's got a penalty for track cuts. That is quite a major talking point of this circuit, is the track limits.
I just saw
some places
you got cone fly across the circuit from somewhere. I don't know where though.
Well, yeah, as I said, track limits is quite a big thing here. People do like to hit over the cones and stuff, and sometimes if you go too far, the game will give you a cut. And after a few cuts, you will be getting a penalty. Although this does, it is getting a tyre change for Philippakos. So maybe he is going to try and go to the end from here. We'll have to keep an eye on that. It is towards the limit. Yes, I do think it's full service for him.
A full service, but 80 minutes to go in the race. Well, 78 minutes to go in the race. I just think that's a bit too far.
Yeah, he obviously thinks he can do it though.
Especially seems Sebring is a high fuel use circuit as well, because it is incredibly fast.
I'll have to see how that works out for him. We did see people make 2 pit stops back in Interlagos because of code 80s and stuff like that. So maybe we'll see that again today. He's going to be dropping all the way to the back. He's still in the box now. 90 seconds gone of him standing still.
That's more than just a full service.
Yeah, maybe he had some damage actually, or something along those lines as well. That he thought, oh yeah, I'll just get it done now, out of the way.
But it does mean that he essentially dropped to the back of the GT3 fields. He's got to fight through all that GT traffic without having the blue flags to help him. Because, you know, he'll be fighting them for position, perhaps even unlapping himself in the GT traffic.
Yeah, in terms of the top points, this is kind of going to be it for Philippakos, unless something absolutely crazy happens. Unfortunately for him and his team. Having said that, Speedy might do have quite a few other drivers to get a good result.
Yeah, I think they've got more bullets in the gun than you do have in a revolver.
Well, including GT3s, then yeah, they would actually. As we've got Tony Miller getting really close again, but he's got a P3 coming up the inside, although I think he's going to be out of the way. Yeah, he's going to get up the inside, but he couldn't get his front wing alongside Brambilla just yet, but that is, yeah, as we said, one way with the traffic. You can try and use it to your advantage, because sometimes you lose time, sometimes you gain time.
As there's a $500,000 lawnmower behind us, one of the GT3 cars went very wide off of the turn 1. But yes, what Tony Miller did there was a almost textbook move of how to use faster traffic to your advantage, because at least what he was going for was to follow the LMP3 through up the inside of turn 1 and just use that free space that was essentially created by the LMP3 car.
Unfortunately, hasn't quite been able to use it on this lap. He is a bit further away. This was the corner that he made a half attempt on a couple laps ago. But he's certainly a lot better on the brakes, because there he closed up hugely again.
As Philippakos is having a 3-minute pit stop for hitting the wall somewhere.
Oh, lovely. He didn't have any sort of visible aero damage, but he must have had a decent amount of suspension damage for him to be able to come in. And if this is actually a really long pit stop, this might put him towards being able to go to the end, although he's going to be unfortunately quite far down to make that actually mean anything regarding significant points.
Tony Mella is making up great ground in that slipstream, but the straight runs out before he can pull alongside.
Oh, but Brambilla's gone a little bit wide actually. Mella's managed to get the front of his car alongside. Almost some contact there, but the outside for turn 1 is not where you want to be at all. So he's going to pull back into the slipstream. Can he get his nose?
Up and under.
Yes, he can. He's gone really big on the brakes. Has he still made the corner? Just about blocked off Brambilla nicely on the apex there. So he's going to have a car length ahead as they come into the braking zone for turn 3. Brambilla thinks about coming back, but he has not been able to make that work. So Tony Mella, after probably about 10 laps of sitting there, has managed to make it work.
Well, Tony Mella did do the up and under, if you like, the crossover move coming into turn out of Sunset Bend into turn 1. Then Brambilla tried to immediately respond by doing a crossover move through turn 1, but it's almost like Mella did Beard left halfway through the corner and just put the brakes on and just didn't accelerate, didn't take the normal racing line, if you will.
Yeah, he kept the car very close to that inside concrete wall, which meant Brambilla had no space to use his momentum that he had. So that was pretty good driving there by Tony Mella, who has finally made the overtake and is up into P3 in the GT3s. But Brambilla is not letting this go. He's stayed right on his tail. And also right on his tail is James Johnson, who's thinking of a move on Arisi. He's almost touching him.
Yeah, the Sancho teammate currently in 2nd place. James Johnson making his way through the complex and on to the back straight, the Ullman Straight, I think it is. Memory serves me correctly. I'm trying to use as much slipstream as possible as Lazarus Philippakis has left the race. That is it for the number 10 Speedy Mike car.
Yeah, he wasn't really going to get any points, or at least any good points anyway. So, yeah, unfortunately, that is another driver out of the race, although we only have 3 gone from the race so far. So not too bad, considering the amount of sort of crashes and incidents we saw in the first few minutes of the race.
As Antonello Miocchi has came into the pits in the LMP3 car, and I think that this is really the beginning of the window to where you can make it to the end now. We're 51 minutes in, 123 minutes to race, which means you've got 72 minutes to go. The LMP3s can do about 70 minutes, so I think we're right on the edge now of seeing the LMP3s making their pit stop.
Yeah, if there's any sort of code 80, it's going to be getting to that moment where they're at least going to think about it. Because if it's a pretty long code 80 as well, you will save huge amounts of time in your pit stop, as the cars are traveling half or even less of the speed that they would normally do. Oh, McGowan has gone off at turn 1. I just seen him recovering. Let's see what happened to him. Was it on his own? Yeah, it's very similar to a couple of cars we've seen already spin there. Just lost rear end coming around turn number 1. He was on the inside overtaking a GT3, but he has rejoined the race. Don't think he actually lost any positions from that.
I don't think he did, no. I don't think he did.
But yeah, his tyres, his rear tyres won't be liking that though. Oh, big crash. Who is that? I have heard a massive crash. Who has crashed? McGear has crashed in the number 19. He's lost his rear wing halfway around the lap, so this might be looking towards a code 80. We'll have to see what the race director thinks. But a couple of drivers going off in the last couple of minutes. Let's see what he did. Yeah, he touched the grass. He touched grass coming around 10, 11, and 12. Slid across the grass on the other side of the track.
We'll come to code 80 in 10 seconds.
Into the barrier. So yeah, code 80 is
5,
called.
4,
and McGear's gone off again
3,
actually.
2, 1. Code 80.
We
As
now
Marco
have code 80.
Mazzetti is now, Marco Mazzetti is now also a DNF'd on the grounds of suspension.
Brambier's in. Brambier is in the pit lane. That's probably too early.
Yeah, Ruben Correa and Alves and David Yunt, the LMP3 cars, they've decided to make a move into the pit lane as well. Will Simon Marshall, he's the next one, the Rookie Monsters. Yes, so from 6th on down, likely in the LMP3s, they will make a pit stop. The problem is D'Amelio, Celik, Berg, Jones, and Smeriglio, the top 5, they passed pit entry before the code 80 was called.
And we've had another driver DNF, Rob Timpen has DNF'd as well in the Seawolf number 46 as well. So a couple of drivers crashing and having issues in the last few minutes. I think that's 3 of them. And as you say, a few drivers have come in. I understand the LMP3s because they've got a big enough tank to get to the end. But Brambier in the and Rekus as well. In fact, these were the 2 I'm pretty sure these were the 2 drivers who pit early when we had a code 80 about this minute in Interlagos as well. And I believe they had to make a second pit stop. So we will have to see.
In 10 seconds.
Going back to green in a few seconds, and Brambier is out. So that has worked pretty well for him. But Rekus is only halfway through his pit stop.
2, 1. Green flag.
So Correa, Alves, Marshall, and Yunt all made pit stops under that code 80. Only McGowan decided to stay out the same with Nick Newcomb. So Correa, Alves, Marshall, and McGowan are the 3 that are on the alternate strategy, if you like, and saves a lot of time by making a pit stop under the code 80.
And we'll have to wait for another sector split. But apparently, Alves is 1 minute 20 seconds off the lead. So I believe that might be good to take the lead when D'Amelio finally takes to the pit lane.
From 6th place.
Yeah, but then can he get to the end easily? Because obviously his tyres will be further worn by the end of the race. And Luca is looking very quick, leading the race by 11 seconds from Celik.
He might be sniffing on fumes in the last lap or so as well.
Yeah, so we'll Have to see, but Alves could have put himself in quite a good position here. Actually, it's updated. He's only 48 seconds off the lead. Because obviously the time would have been longer as they were under code 80, but now it's only 48 seconds, which means he will definitely take the lead. And Simon Marshall is under a minute off the lead as well. So this could be good for those couple of drivers to work their way towards the front of the pack. And now Alexander Jones in a Speedy Mike car is coming into the pit lane as well.
And this is just the danger of endurance racing, if you like, especially in a race as short as this one, is that if the code 80 comes at just the wrong time, you can lose a lot of time through no fault of your own. And there you go, Great Alves up into 5th place, passes Alexander Jones easily in the Speedy Mike car. Indeed, that number 48 car has only been stationary for 17 seconds at this point. Simon Marshall passes him as well. Ollie McGowan in the other Speedy Mike car will be the next car. So you've got to see if these three have actually managed to jump at least 3rd place, I think he was in, wasn't he? It was Alexander Jones before this pit stop. But indeed, Ollie McGowan does jump in as well. So Correa Alves, Simon Marshall and Ollie McGowan are the three in the catbird seat, really, with the best chance of making this alternate strategy
Another
work.
driver with no rear wing, Jeffrey Becker, 11th place. What car is that? The number 17. He's got no rear wing as well. I think that's about the 7th car we've had with no rear wing. Halfway around the track. And again, if there's a code 80 here, this could really
There's a slow car in sector 2. Just take care.
I don't think we're going to code 80. Race Directors just said slow car warning to all of the drivers. So it looks like we're going to be carrying on going for now. And through this the period of the code 80, etc., James Johnson has dropped off the back of Arisi a little bit. There's a few more car lengths than there were before, but there's probably about 20 car lengths between them. Quite a distance now, but that is sometimes just what happens with the code 80s. The field just spread out or compress a little bit.
And of course, at this point, Ruben Correa, Alves, Simon Marshall, Ollie McGowan are all praying for there to not be a code 80 in the next 20 minutes. Just so that their strategy works.
Oh yes, for them, they need people to make green flag pit stops, really. Otherwise, they're not really going to. They're not really going to gain enough time.
There we go, backers back into the pits. So that is danger over for now. Those three can rest a little bit easier, at least for the moment. Also, is that my eyes deceive me? Or is Daniel Finney now in the top 5 in the GT3 class in the Sancho 67?
Yes, he is. Obviously, a couple of GT3 drivers have made their pit stop, but still pretty good for him in that 5th place at the moment. And that would be good actually if he could finish there, because I believe his car is the 3rd in the championship out of the Sanchos. It'd be good to get some nice points, have all 3 of their cars up there. Backer is still in the pit lane, actually getting repairs. So I think this is going to be a pretty long one for him. So that could be quite difficult once he gets back out to get back to a pretty decent points-paying position. And just to reiterate the speed of Luca D'Amelio,
oh yeah,
he's now he's gained about 4 seconds on Correa Alves since we last spoke. So if D'Amelio actually keeps this pace up, he's going to be gaining time back. So if he does have to make a green flag pit stop, maybe he will be able to still be there at the end. And obviously, once he has made the pit stop anyway, he will probably still be a little bit quicker. But Alves is still putting himself in a pretty decent position. And yeah, it's just gone up another couple of seconds on this lap as well. So D'Amelio is certainly looking to be the class of the field. As Celik now with no rear wing. Your 2nd placed driver in the LMP3s, Caspian Racing. has gone down to third position. Oh, he's probably going to crash again. Yeah, he's crashed again because he's got
Yep.
no rear wing.
No rear wing.
All right, we'll come back to code 80.
And that is not what Alves, Marshall, and Yunt wanted.
Five,
Sorry, McGowan wanted. It's
four,
the code 80.
3, 2, 1. Code 80.
That is not what they wanted. Nick Newcomb immediately dives in the pits. Where is Luca D'Amelio?
He's on the back
Sunset Straight.
Yeah, he's
Sorry,
on the back straight.
The Almond Straight, even.
He's quite a way ahead of Luca Burke. So this could actually work out pretty well for D'Amelio if he pits now. And we are almost bang on halfway of this race. So this could be a good time for D'Amelio to make a pit stop because he will probably have some fuel in the tank as well, which means his pit stop will be shorter. Again, it will be further shorter because the fuel that he needs to take will obviously be subtracted from that. So this could be pretty good for Luca. Will he keep right and go into the pit lane? This could be a pretty race-defining moment. And yes, it looks like he is. Is he going to stay right? Yes, he is. Good decision for Luca. This could work out pretty well for him. And where is Luca Burke?
And Luca Burke is halfway down the Almond Straight.
And Chelik is behind Burke. So
yes,
I think Burke probably, there's no point on him making a pit stop really because he's not going to save that much time, whereas Luca might actually be out of the pit lane before these guys come around, or at least he's going to be pretty close anyway. Yeah, D'Amelio is already out of the pit lane, so he probably only just took fuel there, and he is going to come back out into the lead having made his pit stop. But as you say for Correa Alves, this has not worked out well at all because he is now quite a way behind. He's probably about 2 kilometers behind Luca D'Amelio. So unfortunately, the strategy for those who pit earlier hasn't quite worked out, and it's worked out perfectly for D'Amelio. Burke has come in though, and Chelik is going to come in, which means we're going to go back to green flag. So Burke isn't going to save as much time.
Yeah.
So
but
I
he's still
think
saving a little bit of time, so he might as well.
He's still saving a bit, but not quite as much. But I think
this race has definitely gotten quite messy. I think everyone just needs to just cool it slightly. Yeah, respect traffic in that, and we just need to cool it down a little bit, or you're just going to spend the rest of the race under code 80, which is no fun for anyone.
And the
all right, so we're going to go back to green in 10 seconds.
The race director just giving a little warning to the drivers there to start behaving themselves as we go back to green.
2, 1, green flag.
Like as we have now lost Archer Silkula even in the Porsche.
So Luca Burke is just coming out the pit lane now. Correa Alves is coming down the front straight. Can he get himself up to what will be third position? Yes, he can.
Yes, he can.
So he still gained a few positions out of all of this. Obviously, it helps that a couple of drivers DNF in front of him as well.
Simon Marshall might as well. It's going to be fairly close between himself and Burke. Of course, Burke's going to have to go all the way around the outside at turn 1, but comes out just ahead of Simon Marshall. But Burke will, of course, have cold tyres.
And Smereglio still needs to make a pit stop, I believe. So this is still Alves in P2 overall.
It is P2, yes.
Luca D'Amelio has pulled an absolute blinder today. It has to be said. Obviously, potentially lucky with when the Code 80 comes out, but he made the correct decision of coming into the pit lane. And he is going to be miles ahead of the drivers behind him when we get an update at the next sector split. Yeah, 44 seconds he is ahead of Alves, and Smereglio still needs to make a pit stop. So this is a huge lead by D'Amelio in the number 33 Rookie Monsters.
Yeah, you always just need a little bit of luck in endurance racing along with pace. It appears that D'Amelio has had that this time round, and then indeed 44 seconds gap between himself and Ruben Correa Alves. He'll essentially have a 44-second lead once he comes out. 44-second lead once Smereglio makes his pit stop. As James Johnson's now right onto the back wing of Lorenzo Arisi again for 11th place overall and the GT3 lead. Now these two will have to make their pit stops soon as well.
Yeah, I think it was probably because of all the code 80s we've had as well. It was probably just a little bit too early for them to make that pit stop. At least possibly where they were on the track affected that decision as well. So they are still out there. And it will be interesting to see who pits first, actually, because whoever pits first will probably have to take a tiny bit more fuel, which could affect the outcome of this this battle between them if they are that close when they make their pit stops. And Johnson certainly has the speed and the ability to make an overtaking move. He just hasn't quite been able to make it work yet.
As they're starting to put their lights on as well, as dusk is starting to fall here at Sebring. Of course, join us in 2 weeks' time for the 1,000 miles of Sebring in the VEC.
Yeah, that is going to be 1,000 miles of good fun, has to be said. The race
320 something laps, I think.
268.
Oh, really? Is it that little?
Well, it's still quite a lot because this is a really long track. I mean, even the Sennas will only be doing sort of 1 minute 45s ish, maybe a bit slower with traffic. So it's still going to be about 8 to 8.5 hours for that race, and that is certainly a very interesting one. And last year it was actually a 12-hour race, I believe, in the VEC. So we got proper dark for the last few hours.
It was Indianapolis that was the distance race last year. Well,
Yes.
it has been for the past few seasons.
And the distance race actually makes it quite a bit more interesting because no matter how quick or slow the race is or how many code 80s you have, etc., the race is still
comes in.
Those laps.
Johnson is the first one to blink out of Arisi and Johnson.
Okay, so we need to see really what he's going to do, how long he's going to stop for, etc.
Give him a little bit of free air, perhaps, because he felt he's being held up. Perhaps he can think he can do the undercut.
Well, Mella is coming in, his teammate as well, so maybe this is just the Zancho strategy. But I do wonder if he is taking a full tank of fuel or not. Because, as we mentioned before, if you pit with a bit of fuel left, you obviously save time because you won't have to put in quite as much. And those Code 80s might have actually helped them in that regard. Let's see what these two drivers do. Because they are obviously on the podium at this moment in time. So what is Arisi doing in terms of traffic-wise? It's actually looking not too bad. Not too many cars behind him or anything like that. There's going to be a pretty clean outlap. Or, sorry, potentially in-lap, I should say. And this could actually be quite a race-defining moment. So Johnson exits the pits. As he comes to turn 1. And it looks like he's not going to have cars on pit exit, I believe. There should be a pretty decent outlap for him. I think he changed tyres as well. Those new tyres could help him. Although, Brambilla is miles ahead. Because Brambilla pit under that code 80. So James Johnson does need to hope that Brambilla is going to make a pit stop again, because that is a huge amount of time that he needs to make back. Brambilla is coming into
2 minutes, wasn't it?
Yeah, Brambilla is coming into turn 15, 16 now, towards the end of the lap, and James Johnson is only going around turn 7. That is a huge amount of time that they need to sort themselves out, and Arisi is in the pit lane.
Yeah, even if Brambilla needs to stop again, it'll only be a splash and dash.
That is very true. That is very true. So this could be an absolute blinder by Brambilla, but we will have to see. It worked out for Luca D'Amelio. Will it work out for Brambilla? And there's a few cars coming in now. Finane, De Crop as well. So it obviously looks like this is time, and Brambilla goes past. So Brambilla has taken the net lead of the race. And where is James Johnson? Let's have a look. Oh, he's only come around turn 15 and 16, so still a little way to go. So I'll just mention that Luca Burke has got past Correa Alves for 3rd place in the LMP3s just a few seconds ago. So that is Burke now up to what is effectively P2, as Moriglio still needs to make a pit, and now Alves goes off the track as well. Let's go back to the GT3s as Johnson comes around the final corner. Let's see where he is in regards to Arisi. Arisi's still under pit limiter conditions.
He's now released the limiter.
So where is James Johnson?
Yeah, Arisi's got it.
He's miles behind, actually. He obviously had to make a longer pit stop. Because look how far behind. Look how far behind he is. He's lost probably, I'm going to say, 5 seconds. I have to wait to the end of Sector 1 to get a split time. But yeah, he's lost a few seconds there. So that actually hasn't worked out at all for James Johnson. But if he had to pit because of fuel, then that is just what he had to do. Oh, another car is round at turn 1. One of the LMP3s. Just trying to see who that is. Couldn't find it. I think he still has all his wings and everything. There's a Sansano, 23rd position, but it looks like he's actually all good. So no issues for him. Just a bit of time lost there.
Yeah, just a little bit of time lost for Sansano, but again, 23rd at this point. You know, he's just hoping to improve his position in class, because of course points are awarded per class. As we now have the car in 30th place overall, the GT3 car of Benjamin Gelchinski, the Seawolf Net Race number 64, making his way into the pits and stopping and overshooting his pit box and having to reverse back.
Not good. That's another few seconds lost for him. It's always good when you hit your marks. But he didn't on that occasion.
It's when I was watching the first race of the Clipsal 500 this morning, actually, and who was it? I think it was Anton De Pasquale. Missed his marks, and of course for V8 supercars they often have driver communication when they're coming to the pits. And I must say the pit stop engineer for Anton De Pasquale was fairly colourful on the radio after he missed his marks. I can only imagine it's the same in that car at the moment.
Well, fortunately in R-Factor 2, it generally doesn't physically add time. It's only the time of you having to reverse or reposition if you completely missed a pit box. But you don't have to be on the 100% marks like in real life, because obviously in real life then the fuel man and the tyre guys, they all have to shuffle forward a few inches or back a few inches. So it's a little bit more lenient here, but he completely missed the box, so he had to, as you say, reverse, which does lose a few seconds. So last lap time, what did these drivers do? James Johnson was 1/10 quicker than Arisi, so that might take a few laps for him to catch up if he's only 1/10 quicker. And now Nedev is in the pit lane. So Brambilla will take the lead in GT3s, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, he does. So now we just need to see what he can do for the remaining minutes of the race. And where is Arisi? He's only coming onto the back straight. So yeah, God, he's got a huge lead, massive lead for Brambilla. This could work out really well for him.
Of course, you still got that stop go that he may or may not have to take at some point. That's presuming he stays out of trouble throughout the entire race, which, you know, is easier said than done, especially in endurance racing, as Georgi Nedev is in the pits in the GT3s as well, so that moves everyone else behind up one position, which means I think we've still got Jorge Fernandez to make his pit stop. Then we should be roughly in order of... at least in order on track of what it should be of Brambilla or Arisi Johnson.
So these drivers who are still out there without having made a pit stop, such as you say, Jorge Fernandez, they must be doing pretty well to get 75 minutes. Obviously, we've had quite a few laps in Code 80 conditions, including the formation lap. but that is all still taking up a bit of fuel out of their tanks. But he's still going for now. And seeing he'll make a pit stop.
As we've got the battle perhaps for 7th place overall between Semi Celik and Alexander Jones. Of course, Celik was up there on the podium looking to have a solid position and lost his rear wing in an incident, and now he's being chased down by the
Jones was
driver.
What was 1.2 seconds quicker last lap. Obviously, traffic might have played a part in that, but it is still what the time sheet says. And Jones is right behind Celik now. They come around turn 1. Celik had a big crash, remember, so I do wonder if his car is still not perfect, because it doesn't 100% fix suspension damage. There's sometimes still a little bit of further sort of damage and steering wheel issues sometimes. And now Jorge Fernandez comes into the pit lane, which means when he gets there, Risi will take back 2nd place in the GT3s, and James Johnson will take 3rd place in the GT3s, as Johnson just goes around the outside of some traffic there, coming onto the front straight. But now, as we said, Brambilla has got a huge lead, so we need to see what these two drivers of Arisi and Johnson can do, or will it be Brambilla taking out the win here in Sebring?
As they're making the way, I make this point about 45 minutes to go. Can I count correctly? I can. 45 minutes to go.
Yes, 45 and a few seconds to go, and obviously the race will finish as soon as the clock hits 0. The next time your leader gets to the start-finish line, that will be the end of the race. And with the lead that Luca D'Amelio, he might actually have the option of slowing down so they don't have to do an extra lap.
Oh, a little bit of yes.
Which is always quite interesting if you're trying to battle with someone and you're like, no, I just want one more lap to overtake him. And then the leader slows down and that is the end of the race and your chance is gone. But that is the joys you have when you have a 40-second lead like Luca D'Amelio has. At least to Luca Burke.
Of course, just having a look at the timings as well, Luca Burke has got the fastest lap of the race at the moment in the LMP3s at 54.458. Compare that to Luca D'Amelio's 54.481. So no doubt, D'Amelio just want an extra 3 hundredths of a second to try and take back that best lap. Just trying to have a look in terms of the GT3s, who has got the fastest lap, and I believe it may well be Tony Mellon, the 57 Zansho car, with a 2:0.080. Just almost getting under that 2-minute barrier, but not quite.
And I'll tell you someone we haven't really spoken about yet, but it could be pit stop dependent, is just by Mella, is...
Fiat.
Yeah, I believe that's HM Engineering. We haven't actually mentioned that car this whole race so far.
No.
But they are in 5th place, and I want to check, have they made a pit stop? Or is that where they are completely? I think they maybe haven't made a pit stop, which is how they've got up to that position currently. Yeah, their position has just gone up and up and up, or down, whichever way you want to look at it, the whole race. So yeah, I think they still do ask a pit stop, which is how they've sort of jumped
Alexander
up.
Jones has made his way past Celik for that 7th place. So the Speedway driver will now trying to catch David Yunt, but I think that's maybe a bit much of a tall order, because David Yunt's 33 seconds up the road.
Yeah, I think that Caspian car is a little bit bruised and damaged. I don't think they are at their normal speed, because that car was in position 2 before Celik crashed and lost his rear wing. I do think there's a bit more time in that car Yeah, he earlier on in the race he was doing sort of 55s, 56s. His last few laps have been 57s and even a 58. So there's definitely some lasting damage there, unfortunately for them. But they are still in 8th place, which would be a few points to pick up. Well, McGowan goes off at turn 1. Luckily, keeps it out of the barrier. And another LMP3 Smreglo is now finally into the pit lane. We need to see where he's going to come out. He only has 43 minutes of fuel to take.
I think he's going to come out between David Yunton and Alexander Jones in that big 30-second gap.
Yeah, I mean, he's only going to need to take about 60-70% of a tank, if I'm not mistaken. So this could be a pretty short pit lane. And I believe he's not changing tyres either. This could be a pretty short pit stop. But yes, he's getting out straight away. Simon Marshall has gone past. David Junt is coming. Can he make his way out ahead of David Junt? I think David might be able to just get that with the overspeed he is going to have. Let's see, it's going to be pretty close. Well, no, actually, Smreglo has managed to keep that position. So that is 5th place for Wave 3 Esports. And Simon Marshall is in 4th place ahead of him for him to chase down in this last third of the race.
Yeah, the last third of the race, the last 40 minutes for the GT cars. That's pretty much 20 laps for the LMP3s. I'll make that somewhere about 21 or 22 laps perhaps for the LMP3s. Sami Celic has got past Alexander Jones again, so Celic is still fighting back. And he made that move pretty much coming through turn 1 actually, so Alexander Jones now has to try and get that 7th position back as he's making his way down towards the hairpin.
Yeah, he's obviously still got some fight left in that car, as Dick Jones is going to get stuck behind this Pushrod Racing R8 as well a little bit, so that's not helping him getting back past. Yeah, Celic is still there, as you say, still fighting, trying to get those extra points.
Making through Cunningham and on the flat outrun towards Tower, and the Speedy Mike car with the purple flashes, the purple highlights I should say rather, trying to make his way past. And really the next chance is going to be, well, I would say on the Almond Straight going down to Sunset, but I think it's just a little bit too far away for that.
Yeah, potentially on this lap anyway. And just the car behind them, Nick Newcomb, just went off at turn 10. Well, barely went off, but obviously missed his braking zone. But yeah, he's a little bit too far behind these guys to really challenge them towards the end of the race. And these guys are still going at it, coming around the final corner onto the front straight. This is obviously where the overtaking manoeuvre happened a couple of laps ago, but it seems Jones is a little bit too far back on this occasion.
Wait, look how much. I think actually the Speedmite car is slightly better on the brakes than the Caspian car. But the problem is getting close enough, and that might just be the brake that Jones needs. Celic going very wide on the corner coming onto the big bend straight. But Jones has to try and go all the way around the outside the hairpin, last of the late breakers. Does he make it work around the outside? And indeed he does.
Yeah, Celic tried to come back under brakes there. He was really trying to force it. But Jones has got this position for the Speedy Mites team, number 48 at the moment. But Celic in the Caspian Racing 39 gets really close under brakes there. He's certainly trying, and he's not going to let this one go, that's for sure. Just an update on the GT3s. Johnson has closed down a little bit to Lorenzo Risi. but he's still not really within touching distance at all. And they are still quite a way behind Daniele Brambilla. So that is still looking pretty good for Brambilla and also Risi to keep their positions towards the end of this race. And also another pretty close battle that is forming is Marshall. He's getting close to the back of Alves in 3rd and 4th position in the LMP3s.
And you've also got Smireglio and Yund for 5th and 6th. Oh, indeed, Marshall makes that move as Correa Alves went incredibly wide at the hairpin to move the Team Rookie Monsters car up into 3rd place in that podium position.
And
Correa
that would
Alves just completely outbroke himself coming into the hairpin.
That would be a double podium if Marshall can keep this for his team, Team Rookie Monsters. And that car specifically, the 37, has not scored a single point this season. In fact, it is the only car in the whole grid in both classes that has not scored a point this season. And they are currently in a podium position. A podium alongside their teammate Luca Di Melio leading the race as well.
That's something you don't particularly want to have the, well, we'd say accomplishment of, but that's not the right word, but something that you certainly don't want to be the only team to have not scored.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting find when I noticed that earlier on. And yes, Simon has just been put into this car as well. He was in the GT3 that Mantis Rekus is driving, but he has now moved himself into the P3, and he's doing pretty good here in 3rd place. And if you remember all those laps ago, at the start of the race, Lorenzo De Chutis crashed on the
opening lap.
Basically the first corner as well. He's only still up to 18th place, still behind GT3s as well, which is just how far back he was. He's still got a way to go to even get on ahead of all the GT3s.
Here comes Scuderia Leone car. Will he make the move towards the inside of the hairpin? Not doing it this time around. Cunningham is going to be his next opportunity.
Or is contact behind as one of the Zancho GT3s gets hit. Who was that? Was that Tony Miller, I think, got hit? I need to go on the replay because quite a lot was happening there.
So Tony... I just saw dust and sideways GT3 cars in the background.
Number can't quite see actually what number that is. It's the Caspian GT3. The 78 was unlapping himself from Tony Miller, which is fair enough, but he went too deep and he caught one of the Porsches just ahead of him, which is not what you want to see at all. And it was August Onsel. It's the 65, who was actually a further lap down to him as well. So he's just misjudged his braking zone, and then the Porsches come back and hit Tony Mellers. But hopefully there isn't too much damage for Tony in that one. But he certainly lost a little bit more time there than he would have wanted.
Oh, always, yes. Always, ideally, you don't want to lose any time at all throughout a race, but unfortunately, that's not always possible.
And that is what happens with multi-class and things like that. People are having their own race, and sometimes it affects you, unfortunately. But the race would not be the same if there was no cars on the track. So it is a weird one, but that is just how multi-class goes sometimes. A bit unfortunate for Tony there, but he's still looking in a pretty decent place at the moment. 4th position in class. Simon Marshall now has actually pulled away from Alves, so that looks like a pretty good bet would be to say Simon Marshall can get a podium here today. Alves was one of those drivers who took the very early pit stop, and I guess Marshall was as well. But it seems that Alves is struggling a little bit more to keep the pace as we come into the last half an hour in a couple of minutes, which is always the thing that we mentioned, that would Alves be struggling by the end, either with tyres or with the fuel. Seems like that's certainly the case a little bit. Smereglio is actually going to be catching up to him pretty soon as well. And even David Junt, not too far behind. Oh, and Sanseno goes backwards in the final corner, loses his rear wing. Will this cause any issues for other people? 11th place, the number 9. Can he get back out? Yes, he can. He's right next to the pit entry. And he has made it in there pretty safely.
As we've just got a little message from our race director, Sean Jacobs, saying, "Oh yes, I can go to." He's celebrating the fact that he can go back to bed after this race because it's 3:37 in the morning where he is.
Yeah, nice time zones.
Nice time zones.
Yeah, the world is not flat as some people say. So unfortunately, people like Sean do have to wake up at stupid o'clock in the morning. But we do thank him for being the race director, calling Code 80s, and just generally making sure everyone is behaving themselves. And making this race happen in general. And just as I say, behaving themselves, Luca Di Meglio went up the inside of 2 GT3s. So, not always listening to advice, are these drivers?
As I make 3rd to 6th, being covered by 5 seconds at this moment in time. Marshall, Correa-Alves, Smereglio, and Junt.
Yeah, this gap between 3rd and 6th is closing down overall. So maybe we're going to see some more position changes here. And they are actually just coming to lap Arisi and James Johnson. And Johnson has caught up a little bit more again to Arisi, but still too far away to make an attack. He just lost a little bit too much time in the pit stop process, really. After sitting on the back of Arisi for pretty much the whole of the first stint. Now David Junt gets past Arisi as well. So yeah, these drivers are getting pretty close. Let's have a look at the lap times that they are doing. Last lap, Junt was actually the quickest of this lot. Yeah, that is just proving that these gaps are all closing up. But again, that is kind of dependent on traffic and things like that as well. And I tell you what, the lead at the front for Luca Di Meglio has come down about 10 seconds to 32 seconds. Luca Burke, last lap was 2 seconds quicker than Di Meglio, and Burke's lap was 0.3 off his own fastest lap of the race. So Burke has definitely got some speed here today, even though his qualifying position didn't say that.
Yeah, 2 seconds is just almost silly over the course of one lap. Look at how much faster he was than everyone else in the last lap as well. Pretty much 2 seconds faster than everyone.
Yeah, he obviously had a clean track and used it to the best of his advantage. I do wonder if Luca's not pushing 110% because obviously he's not in a very stressful position at the moment, but he also wants to make sure he gets this victory here in Sebring.
Brambilla is also still pushing at 100% because his last lap was pretty much comparable to Lorenzo Arisi's.
Yeah, Brambilla is doing pretty well in that GT3, has to be said.
Yeah, doesn't appear to be scared of fuel at this moment in time.
So what number car is Brambilla? He's the 71.
Yes.
So the 51, 51 I mean, is 6th place in the GT3's championship. He's on 49 points. some 14 points off third place. Nick De Silva in the 83, but as we said, Nick De Silva is DNF'd from this race. So if all goes to plan, Brambilla might be able to get himself towards third place in the championship here today, but he's still pretty much out of it in terms of the overall championship, considering Arisi and Johnson are in second and third place. And Arisi and Johnson, their two cars, the 87 and 62, have not been off the podium once this season, I believe. Actually, no, sorry. Waveframe got a 4th place. So they haven't been outside the top 4 all season in the first 4 and now the 5th race. So that's just showing the consistency and the reason why they are at the top of the standings by quite some way.
Yeah, it's really all about consistency as well in a championship like this, especially since there's only 8 races.
And Johnson Semeglio are going side by side. Sorry to butt in there, but Junt has managed to get past, and Semeglio now is trying to fight back, but Junt has got himself up into 5th position, and he's now only 3 seconds behind Correa Alves as well. So Junt has got some pace in this second half of the race. He's managing to make that work.
They're trying to make that work. Can Smiriglia retake that 5th position away from the esports car? But David just appears to be pulling away ever so slightly. As it stands to make the way down towards turn 1 to begin lap number 46 of the race for these two. Through that incredibly fast turn 1, and Smiriglia going wide, turning that LMP3 into a lawnmower.
Yeah, the grass was a bit long there, but he didn't need to do it in that way, to be honest. So that might be a 6th place finish for Smiriglia if he cannot stay on the back of David Junt. But as we mentioned earlier, David was looking to be the fastest person on track apart from Luca Burke. He's got some pace in that EVA by Bezelia car. Can Johnson finally catch up to Arisi?
Yes.
He is sat there for so long now since the pit stop. He's gained a little bit.
Yeah, he's certainly.
And then
he's
sat, but then he's just sat about 2 or 3 seconds behind, like he is now, for quite a few laps. Last lap, he was actually 0.6 slower as well. So I do wonder if maybe Johnson doesn't quite have it on Arisi today, despite getting pole position. Which is probably just a testament to Arisi's drive as well. Because even when Johnson was right behind him, he didn't make a mistake. It was Johnson who was the one making mistakes into the hairpins, going deep and stuff like that. Losing himself time and losing himself the opportunity
just perhaps getting
to get
a little bit too heated,
Yeah. There's still over 20 minutes left in the race for him to be able to make something happen. The real question is really, can he make that happen though? He's had quite a few opportunities so far. Hasn't been able to make anything work just yet. And who is that off? I just noticed someone was off the track. I think, was that Alves maybe? I couldn't quite see. Someone was definitely off the track.
Who was that?
Coming through the sector 1. I think they were
55
all good.
It's a 55 car, which is my team says we're AJ Snyder in the Satellite Racing car, currently 18th in class, 33rd overall.
Yes, that is otherwise known as last, unfortunately, for AJ Snyder. 33rd out of 44, as we have had 7 retirements from this race.
And yes, David Yunt and Smrigler. Smrigler really isn't falling away from the back of David Yunt, is he?
He's staying there. He's obviously had pretty decent pace to get himself in this position in the race as well. But he's just losing a tiny bit of time to David Yunt, who's just slowly pulling off into the distance. And after our hopes of Burke catching D'Amelio, the gap has actually gone up a couple of seconds again since we mentioned that. So maybe it is just yo-yoing a little bit.
Or just don't mention it and it won't go up. Also that. As we've got a battle in GT3s even, for 5th in class, between Ricky Afiat, Mantis Rakius and Matteo De Croo.
Yeah, I think Rekus is going to get a run here.
As well in the background.
Yeah, Rekus is going to get a run here towards the inside, but he has got his teammate, his LMP3 teammate, coming up behind, which might cause some issues, but he's managed to make it work. And Afia has actually been pushed out wide here a little bit, so De Crop manages to get past as well. And where is Nedev? He's not quite close enough, but this is what traffic can do. We've got 3 LMP3s and 4 GT3s all battling as they come through. Because I believe that is Luca D'Amelio, and don't quite know who the other LMP3 is, unfortunately. But yeah, they're all battling here.
He almost took out his teammate as well.
Oh my god, they're getting very close here.
Don't do that. Don't take out your teammate, especially when he's in another class. That's.
Yeah, so this is McGear actually getting involved, and he is that actually for position?
Yeah, that's for position as well in the LMP3s at the same time.
McGear lost his rear wing many laps ago now, and De Crop is getting pushed off here a bit as well. So this is technically for position, so they can battle, and if De Crop is quicker, despite being a class difference, they can actually make that work. And now Nedev behind is going past the HM Engineering McLaren up into 7th place in the GT3 class. And Sean Jacobs has just worked out that Brambia needs to go a total of 69 minutes on fuel, which is towards the limit of what the GT3 can do. However, he did try this in Interlagos as well, so he obviously backs himself to be able to do it. And as mentioned by Neil earlier, even if he does have to make a pit stop, it will only be a splash and dash, so he won't lose too much time. He'll lose a bit, but not too much. So it could still be a race win on the cards today.
Afiat's lost his position to Nedev as well, so he's gone from 5th to 8th in the space of a lap.
So he obviously doesn't owe us a pit stop, because earlier I said he might need to owe us a pit stop, but he obviously doesn't.
Yeah, I don't think he does.
As we have had 103 minutes of this race, including the 3 minutes for the formation lap. We've had 100 minutes of the race, so there's no way he would have been able to do that. So they obviously did make a pit stop, but they took it at the right time through the Code 80s, but a few cars now have been able to get past them. So unfortunately they've dropped a few positions there at HM Engineering. When Daniel Finney is off at turn number 1 and 2. Does he have any damage? Yes, I think he actually did hit the wall at turn 1 for the number 67. Yeah, he turned... Oh, this is like the 4th car we've seen. Turns in, corrects front end, then grips up and smashes into the barrier. He's going to have some damage on that for sure in the number 67, going quite slowly. But he is pretty well controlled, so maybe no need for a Code 80 as McGear spins around at turn 10. So he loses those positions that he has just gained, because as we said, all these cars ahead of him are actually for position, even though they are in the slower class.
Yeah, will DDF, DNF. There we go.
Well, we hope not.
I had that one stored up in my bank. Yes, so it looks like he will eventually get back to the pits. But
He's
it will
wiggling
take...
all over the place though. And he's got a couple of cars for position coming up behind him. But Daniel is a pretty calm
We have a slow car
person,
just entering sector
so
3. Just be aware.
he should get out the way quite nicely. Still got about half the track to go though before he gets back to the pit lane. Yeah, God, yeah, that definitely has some suspension damages.
Yeah, that's not a happy car
Yeah.
at all.
So where is he currently? He is 11th place in class. He's already lost a couple of positions. He's going to lose a few more. So quite a few points going down the drain for that team.
As Luca Berk's in the pits.
Or McGear DNFs as well. So not the race
Luca
for McGear.
Luca Berk in the pits from second.
Interesting.
That's a splash and dash.
Yeah, very short.
7 seconds,
stop.
so it isn't 7 seconds, so it isn't a stop.
Car has
Though.
made it
That's
back
a
to
splash
pits.
and dash.
Yeah, he obviously just needed a little bit more to get to the end. We've only got 15 or 16 minutes left in this race. But that pretty much confirms that Luca is probably going to take the win here. As Luca just lost another few seconds there as well. Although this means Simon Marshall might be able to grab a second place here if he has the speed on Luca Berk.
There, yeah.
Have to see what the pace is like. Though Marshall's last lap was not the greatest. But again, traffic can alter individual laps. It is all about your average lap that you get across the course of the race.
Breakers and De Crop are going at it as well.
And De Crop is quite a aggressive driver, but so can Mantis. So this is going to be quite a nice battle as we come into the final 15 minutes of the race. And this is for 5th and 6th, as you said, in class. So for some pretty decent points. And De Crop has actually got a pretty decent exit out of the final corner.
Run.
Can he get his nose down the inside of turn 1? No, he can't. But in the end, he's going to have to go around the outside, although Rekus is going to come wide and make that not possible for De Crop. He's going to go all over the sand on the exit there. And can't quite make it work. But they don't want to battle too hard because Nedev is right behind them.
Yeah, there was a car with -2 inches, I think, on the inside there when De Crop tried to go for the inside line coming into turn 1. As they're making their way through Big Bend and down towards the hairpin now. Mantis Rekus holding on to that position for now. And perhaps De Crop at this point is just trying to scope out a few strengths and weaknesses of the Rookie Monsters car. But the thing is, he hasn't got that much time to do it. 15 minutes to go.
Yeah, another battle to look out for as well. Smaregulo's on the back of David Junt. They're getting very close through turn number 1 and 2. Now as they head into turn 3, they are very close to Correa Alves as well. So I don't think this battle is over because Simon Marshall is just up there. However, they have just sort of stayed in the same position for now. Over the last sort of 5 laps or so. So it's definitely De Crop and Rekus is the battle to look out for at the moment. Oh, Rekus had a screen freeze. Rekus had a screen freeze. Jumped backwards a little bit, which meant Nadev and De Crop have got past, although Nadev is actually still side by side with Rekus. Rekus holding it around the outside. What a defense! What a defense by Rekus. Hasn't quite worked out, but he's certainly trying to make it work. And does that mean that Afiat? Yes, Afiat is now behind them as well as Jeffrey Backett in the LMP3. So these drivers still fight.
I think upside down for
there
Afiat.
was. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of lag there because Afiat is moving all over the road on my screen. I think there's a little bit of lag there, which meant that Rekus unfortunately made some pretty hefty contact with Afiat there. So 2 little potential internet issues on the last couple of corners have meant that Rekus has dropped 2 positions now, and Afiat is down to 20th place overall. So that means Nadev is in 6th place now, behind De Crop. As we come towards the end of the race, not too much time for these guys to still sort out their final positions. As Rekas is now let back past Finet, who is back out on the track after a pit stop for repairing the damage.
They're trying to repair that damage, waiting to repair that damage. As Alves versus Yunt versus Smereglo. Now we have for 4th place in the LMP3s. These three nose to tail with just 13 minutes to go.
Yeah, they're right on the back of Alves now. There was a little bit of a gap before, but they are now right there, and there's some further traffic to come. And now David Junt, really good at braking, has made him catch up even more. So he's going to be getting towards the slipstream as well. And maybe towards the end of this lap down the back, he can make something work. Yeah, catches up again quite a lot in the braking zone, more than just the concertina effect. He's actually closing up completely as they accelerate as well. Now there is a GT3 Aston Martin in front of them, and this is going to hold up Alves as well. So David Junt might be able to make something work in the slipstream.
All of them at the same time. Incredible. Now they have to go around the outside of that GT3 car, and that's just pandemonium a bit as they're coming down towards the complex.
And Smereglo comes past as well. So he is not out of this battle either. So they got split up there a tiny bit because of the traffic. So Alves has got a little bit of breathing room. And they've got a car ahead of them who... Trying to see who that is. Is that actually Simon Marshall? I think it might be. So Simon Marshall is only a little bit up the road as well as they count down, as they get let past by Lorenzo De Chutis.
Oh, it's David Yunt and Smereglo as well, going side by side down the front straight. Yunt just holding onto that position for now, and I'm feeling there's a little bit of contact almost in the exit of turn 1 there. As they come down into turn 3, the left-hander, and Smereglo just falling back ever so slightly for now.
Yeah, it seems like every time these drivers get a bit close to each other, a little mistake or thing happens, which unfortunately increases the gap a little bit, but Smereglo is still looking pretty close to David Junt.
Taking the way across the back of the circuit towards Tower. Smereglo still not able to make a move on Yunt.
He's getting very, very close though.
Oh, it certainly is, yeah. I have a feeling it might just be a last lap lunge somewhere.
And there's probably only 5, maybe 6 laps to go, including this one in the race. So not too long for these drivers to get their positions, and they have now dropped off the back of Alves a little bit, as they have a Porsche just in front of them as well. But Alves is getting very close to Simon Marshall for the final podium position in the 2 hours of Sebring. We've now got these two little duos coming down the back straight towards Sunset Bend as we head into the final 10 minutes of this race.
Yeah, David Yunt still holding on to that 5th position. Simon Marshall still holding on to that 3rd position, although Correa Alves just went very wide on the entrance to Sunset and has just lost a little bit of traction on the rear halfway through the corner. As David Yunt and Smereglo almost going side by side. No, the GT car thwarted that effort. Yunt moving to the middle of the circuit will take a defensive line into turn 1.
And they're getting so close. Just takes one of these drivers to make a tiniest of mistake, and now either be the position won or lost for whoever it is. Such are the close margins in a 2-hour race. It is a semi-sprint race, as you said earlier on. Got less time to sort out your positions, and you got to make the opportunities work when you get them. Let's take a look at their previous laps, Alves was 1.1 seconds quicker than Marshall on the last lap, I should say. And Marshall, I think, is struggling a bit here with potentially the tyres.
Tyre wear, yeah.
As he
As
has been on them for quite a while now.
Sorry, coming down into Tower. I thought Smiriglia was going to try and up and under.
Junt's gone wide though.
Oh, Yunt with a big slide on the application of power coming out of Tower.
John is going to have to defend this. But he doesn't want to lose too much time here, otherwise he'll lose all of his momentum coming onto the back straight. And he'll be at a disadvantage coming towards Sunset Bend, although Smiriglia gets all wide over those bumps, but so does Simon Marshall ahead of him. We saw the dust fly up, and that means Alves is going to get a run here. He's going to have to go around the outside, or at least get some sort of switchback onto the main straight. Can he make it work? He's keeping his car there nicely. He's going to try and cut back, get a better exit towards turn 1. Has he managed to make it work? He's right in the slipstream. He's got the momentum as we come up to turn 1. Simon defends again on the inside, so I think he's going to be able to hold this position if he can keep it towards the apex, which he can. But that is still third place for another couple of corners at least for Simon Marshall, but these cars are really coming for him now.
Hey, that was Alves moving abruptly to the left-hand side of the circuit, trying to take that inside line, but Marshall closed that door, and Yunt and Smiriglia essentially nose to tail now. Smiriglia trying to use the slipstream to make a move, coming down to the hairpin for 5th place. Yunt goes defensive on the inside, moves back to the middle. Here comes Smiriglia, oh, and that's a punt. That was a punterino. Oh, what a save by Yunt. That was 4-wheel slide all the way around the hairpin.
Yeah, that was good for him to catch it. He actually didn't lose too much time either, but Smiriglia was flashing him a bit, so maybe he thought David moved around a little bit too much, but it's still P5 for the Swiss driver at this moment in time. And that means that they've dropped off a little bit from Alves, so it looks like it's a two-way battle for 3rd and a two-way battle for 5th.
That was incredible.
Junt's got held up by that GT3, which is giving Smiriglia another chance, but he's going to have to go around the outside, which will be the inside, although David actually defends this pretty well, it has to be said, as they come through turn 15. Can he get a switch back to get a better exit? It didn't work last lap, but David Junt's gone wide again. He's really pushing.
Yeah, he's pushing 110% at this point.
And yeah, maybe not on this lap. But yeah, certainly these guys are pushing really hard as we are now into the final 5 minutes of the race as well. When Johnson is coming for Arisi for the leader GT3s,
yep.
and he thought about it down into turn 10, but maybe not on this occasion. But Johnson has finally, after what has been best part of an hour, has finally caught up to Lorenzo Arisi with only a few minutes to go.
As well.
He did, but he's obviously kept his tyres well, and he is coming back for some more action.
And Brambilla in the 51 car has now made it 65 minutes in that GT3.
Yeah, the gap has closed down a lot though. Brambilla is not even down to the back straight, and Arisi's coming onto the back straight, so Brambilla is potentially saving fuel or something along those lines to make sure he gets towards the end of the race.
Yeah, he was. I think he was banking on a code 80.
Johnson,
that's why he was
is he going round the outside? He's going to have to do the switchback to get a better exit over all those bumps in the final corner. Yes, look how close he is. Arisi defends completely to the concrete wall. But has he done enough? Can Johnson get down the inside? There's going to be contact.
Oh no,
there's going to be contact. And Johnson is actually braking there to let Arisi pass. He doesn't want to make an overtaking move like that. But he's only got a couple more minutes to try and make something work.
Yeah. I think Brambilla went flat out at the beginning of this stint, hoping for a code 80 at some point, that just never came.
Yeah, and these guys are actually getting pretty close to Brambilla, so I have to keep an eye on those lap times. Brambilla, yeah, was 4 seconds slower last lap. 4 whole seconds. So if you have to save too much more, this could be a threat for the race lead.
Coming through the hairpin now, Arisi just holding off the Sancho car of James Johnson, making the way up towards Cunningham, the first of the main right-handers in the back end of the circuit here. And no room there, really. Johnson's next opportunity is going to be coming to Sunset Bend along the Almond Straight.
And what could be a deciding factor is when Luca Di Meglio crosses the finish line to take the race win as well. Because that will stop the race, or it will make the race be 1 lap longer. So we'll have to see what happens. There is almost 2 minutes left. So they will have 2 more laps of this race as Di Meglio just crosses the line now. So he'll do 1 more.
He's got a minute lead though. Theoretically, it could just be 1 to go.
Well, yeah, he could back off if he wants.
But he'd have to back off by a good 20 seconds. I'm not sure if he'd do that.
Whereas now SimRacing gets very close to the back of David Junt as well, for 5th place still in the LMP3s. Alves has dropped off a little bit from Marshall. Brambilla pits. Oh, he couldn't make it.
In the pits, and James Johnson has seen this and knows it is of utmost urgency to make the move on Arisi. And again, will he go for the same move? No, he's now going to try all the way around the outside at turn 1 this time round. Contact! Johnson goes round, or does he? Does he
saves
catch
it? He saves it. He's still in the game. He is still in the game, but he's got to catch up a little bit. And we'll have to see if Lucas slows down on this lap to make this the final lap, or if he will continue to do 1 more lap. But either way, Brambilla had to make a pit stop. He was 2 laps short to the end, unfortunately for him. As we now come towards the closing stages of this race, there's still a few positions to be had, and SimRacing is now very close to the back of David Junt as we come towards turn 1. But he's going to have to go to the outside, which is not really that possible, but he's trying it around the outside. David Junt's going to push him out a little bit. They both go all over the grass, and all contact was made. SimRacing is going to be in the wall. Luckily, not too badly, actually, so he stays alive for another day. But that looks like that battle has unfortunately come to an end. And will Luca slow down?
Oh,
I think he is.
Half throttle.
Yeah, Luca is slowing down. So this is the final lap of the race for these drivers to make their moves stick or not. And yet, Di Meglio is slowing down. Can anyone else make a move? Let's have a look. So Alves is potentially a little bit too far behind, and that is race over. So Luca Di Meglio is going to be taking the win here for the 2 hours of Sebring, the 5th race of the Virtual Le Mans Cup. Good job by Luca today. Perfect pit stop to take the victory.
And James Johnson is just going to end up short at the end of this race. He's going incredibly wide through Sunset. He's going to try the up and under, but there's not enough time until the start-finish line. Lorenzo Arisi takes the win in GT3s by 0.2 of a second after 2 hours of racing.
Yeah, that was a very close battle between Arisi and Johnson, and Brambilla could not make it. And he's going to get 4th position as he comes round the final corner. So the podium for GT3s is decided. But for the LMP3s, we've got Luca Burke coming around the final corner to retain his championship lead despite starting in 8th position. And Simon Marshall will get a podium for the number 37, their first points of the season, and it is a podium. Really good race for Simon Marshall there to hold off for Alves, and actually overtook him about 30 minutes ago to get that podium. So good job by Team Rookie Monsters today. Double podium in LMP3. And then David Junt manages to hold off for 5th position. SimRacing in 6th. Alexander Jones will end up in 7th place because 8th Chelik is already finished. He was a lap down. So was Nick Newcomb and Ollie McGowan as well. And in your GT3's 5th in class was De Krop, then Nedev and Mantus Rekus. And then all the way down, a couple of laps down was, that's a difficult name. Jelzinski in 22nd overall.
Wilczynski. Just say it with confidence.
But overall, it seems to be it was the day of Rookie Monsters.
Indeed, yes.
At least in the LMP3s. Luca won the race by 51 seconds in the end. He chose the perfect Code 80 to make his pit stop. And he will be taking home those 30 points for the race here today. 2 hours of Sebring. And we've only got 2 more races left in the championship. We've got the 2 hours of Portland and then the 4 hours of Le Mans to finish the season in a couple of months' time.
Yes, so it's 4 weeks, I believe, until the 2 hours of Portland, round 6 of the VLMC. And indeed, in 2 weeks' time, it's the 1,000 miles of Sebring, the big boys, the hypercars, the LMP2s, and the GTE, making their way here in the VEs. But indeed, as you said, Cameron, the day of Team Rookie Monsters with Luca Di Meglio and Simon Marshall, 1 and 3, and indeed an incredible job by Lorenzo Risi, just holding off James Johnson despite the massive amount of pressure in the final few minutes of the race. So yes, 2 weeks until the 1,000 miles of Sebring, 4 weeks until the 2 hours of Portland. So from myself, from Cameron Roger, and from race director Sean Jacobs and the entire field here at the VLMC, we'll see you then, and so long, farewell, and we'll see each other on the other side.